Welcome to the Health Safety Environmental Training Program at PSA. These presentations are designed for awareness only, and additional training may be required depending on program requirements. Consult with your supervisor or HS manager for more information. This procedure applies to all PSA organizations and majority-owned subsidiaries worldwide, setting the minimum requirements that must be followed by all entities. The purpose of this hot work training is to protect you and your colleagues from the hazards associated with hot work activities, such as burning, welding, cutting, and other similar tasks. Additionally, the training aims to minimize the risk of these activities starting a fire in the workplace. The policy requirements are outlined in the Group HSS Hot Work Standard. Before we proceed, let's review some key definitions and terms related to this training. Firewatch or a fire watchman. This is a trained employee assigned to remain on site throughout the entire hot work operation, ready to extinguish a fire or take other necessary actions if a fire occurs. Hot work permit. A crucial fire prevention tool designed to reduce the risk of starting a fire during hot work activities. Fire, a specialized permit granted to approve designated hot work at a specific location and time frame. Observation and monitoring. Continuous observation of the hot work area is required to prevent a fire from starting. After an initial 30 minutes of monitoring, an additional 60 minutes of observation is necessary. We will discuss this further when we review the firewatch duties. Next, we will review employee responsibilities as they apply to hot work activities. The terminal manager is responsible for ensuring that all hot work activities, whether for local or field services, are managed in accordance with the requirements of this procedure. This includes the use of trained personnel and the necessary equipment. The terminal HSS manager is responsible for conducting regular audits to verify that the hot work program is properly implemented and functioning. The HSS manager also provides guidance on training requirements for primary responsible persons, authorized employees, firewatch, and other affected employees. The primary responsible person is the qualified employee from the operating department who oversees and manages the hot work aspects of the job, including the authorization of the hot work permit. The authorized employee is trained and fully knowledgeable about the equipment and hot work processes. They're responsible for reviewing the issued hot work permit and preparing the work area as outlined in the permit. The authorized employee also ensures that the hot work operation is carried out in compliance with the permit conditions and has the authority to stop the job if conditions change unfavorably. The firewatch or firewatchman is responsible for monitoring the hot work process and managing the hot work area during and after the operation. Safe designated areas may be established in locations such as welding shops, metalworking areas, for example, maintenance shops, cutting shops, soldering stations, or similar spaces that are isolated and free of flammable or combustible materials that could ignite a fire. These areas will be designated as safe designated areas, allowing hot work to proceed without the need for an authorized hot work permit, firewatch, or other typical fire prevention measures. These areas must be isolated using welding curtains or non-combustible insulating barriers. Notices must be posted in safe designated areas, stating that hot work can be carried out without a permit. The notice should include the following wording in the local language. A hot work permit is not required within this area. A fire hose or fire extinguisher must be readily available near the work area. Except for soft soldering with a soldering iron, hot work activities performed in areas not designated as safe designated areas must be carried out with a hot work permit. Permit-required areas are locations where it is not feasible to move the work to a safe designated area. Hot work is only allowed once the area is made fire-safe by either removing combustibles or protecting them from ignition sources. If multiple hot work tasks are being performed in a single area, each task will require its own hot work permit. A hot work permit is valid for one shift only, and a new permit is required for any new work crews. Hot work operations are strictly prohibited in the following situations. In areas not classified as safe designated areas, where a valid hot work permit has not been obtained. In buildings where sprinkler protection is impaired, in the presence of explosive atmospheres, such as mixtures of flammable gases, vapors, liquids, or dust with air. On or inside any drum, container, or vessel that has not been properly cleaned to eliminate potential explosive atmospheres from residual contents. In areas near the storage of large quantities of flammable or combustible materials that could easily ignite. This is an example of what a hot work permit may look like. It includes information such as the date, time, and specific location where hot work may be performed. You must use the approved hot work permit for your business. Hot work cannot proceed in areas requiring a permit until a completed and issued hot work permit is in place. The hot work permit also specifies the expiration time. Once this time is reached, all hot work must stop. The permit can either be extended or a new one issued if work needs to continue. A hot work permit is valid for one shift only. The permit will specify the exact task to be performed, such as welding, cutting, or grinding, and will also include the emergency contact number or notification method in case of fire or another emergency. A completed hot work permit must be displayed at the job site until all hot work activities are finished. Additionally, it is recommended to contact the local fire department to confirm if any additional permits are required by the county, district, or municipality. The hot work permit serves as a checklist to verify safety measures before starting hot work activities. When reviewing the items on the permit, you must indicate the status of each item with yes, no, or not applicable. Let's review some of the key items that must be verified before work begins. Are building sprinklers available and in service? Is an appropriately selected fire extinguisher readily available in the immediate vicinity? Has the hot work equipment been inspected and found to be in satisfactory condition? Is the area free of flammables, combustibles, and oil deposits, or have they been removed or protected? Have fans and conveyors been isolated or shut down? Are floor and wall openings within the area covered to prevent slag or sparks from reaching other areas or personnel? Has a fire watch been assigned? Once the permit is completed, it must be approved by the authorized employee and primary responsible person. After approval, the permit should be posted at the work area for the duration of the task. Before we continue, let's gain a better understanding of fire beyond the technical definitions mentioned earlier. Fire can be visualized as a four-sided pyramid. Each side represents a necessary component for a fire to develop or intensify. For a fire to propagate, you need heat, the presence of fuel, oxidation, and a chain reaction. The firefighting strategy aims to break the pyramid by removing or disrupting one of these core components. For example, cooling the fire using water to lower the heat, removing the fuel by shutting a valve or stopping the flow of materials, blocking the oxidizer, usually air with foam, which acts as a barrier separating the fuel from oxygen. Each of these methods is specific to certain situations, but when applied correctly, they are effective ways to extinguish a fire. To better understand firefighting strategies, it's important to identify the type or class of material that is on fire. Materials are categorized into 4 different classes. Class A, ordinary combustibles such as wood, paper, cloth, rubber, and many plastics. For these materials, water is an appropriate choice to cool and remove heat from the fire, addressing the heat aspect of the fire pyramid. Class B, flammable liquids, including gasoline, oil, grease, tar, oil-based paints, lacquer, and flammable gases. For these materials, the best option is to use carbon dioxide or dry chemicals to suppress the fire. The goal is to remove either the fuel or the oxidizer, oxygen, component of the fire triangle. Class IEC, electrical equipment such as wiring, fuse boxes, circuit breakers, machinery, and appliances. Do not use water for these fires as it can cause electrocution if the circuit is still energized. Carbon dioxide or dry chemicals are the safest options to suppress electrical fires. Class D, combustible metals such as magnesium, titanium, and sodium. These fires require specific materials such as sodium chloride to extinguish. Understanding the materials that could catch fire in your work area is key when performing hot work. Ensure you have the correct type of fire extinguisher for the materials present. This is why many fire extinguishers are rated as ABC, meaning they are suitable for use on all 3 of the most common fire classes, A, B, and C. One class to pay particular attention to is Class B, which includes flammable liquids. The hazard associated with flammable liquids is that it can be present even when the liquid itself is not visible. Many of these materials have high vapor pressures, causing them to vaporize and travel away from their point of origin. If hot work is performed in environments where large concentrations of flammable liquids, either stored or manufactured, are present, the atmosphere must be tested with an explosive meter. The explosive meter helps determine whether vapors are at concentrations that can ignite. This concentration is measured in terms of LFL, lower flammable limit, or LEL, lower explosive limit, and UFL, upper flammable limit, or UEL, upper explosive limit. LFL and LEL are interchangeable terms, as are UFL and UEL. For vapor to ignite, its concentration needs to fall between the lower and upper limits, as shown in the graph. LFL, or LEL, represents the minimum concentration, expressed as a percentage of volume. If the concentration is below this limit, a flame will not occur, even in the presence of an ignition source. This is often described as the concentration being too lean. UFL, or UEL, represents the maximum concentration, expressed as a percentage of volume. When the vapor concentration exceeds this limit, a flame will not occur, even in the presence of an ignition source. This is described as the concentration being too rich to burn, similar to flooding the carburetor in your car. However, if the concentration is too rich, it can eventually decrease to a level that will support ignition. When working in these environments and using an explosive meter to measure the concentration of flammable liquid vapors, the reading must show 0% LFL or LEL before hot work can proceed safely. For the safety of the authorized user, it is crucial to test the atmosphere for acceptable conditions, as the concentration of flammable liquids or gases may be unknown. Test equipment must be calibrated and field tested prior to each use, with calibration taking place on a monthly basis. When hydrocarbon vapors or other flammable liquids or gases are, or may have been present near the hot work area, flammable vapor testing must be conducted before issuing a permit to ensure it is safe to proceed. Hot work should only be authorized if the initial flammable vapor concentration reading is less than or equal to 5% of the lower explosive limit, LEL, and the oxygen concentration is less than or equal to 23.5%. Continuous LEL and oxygen monitoring must be provided when the work involves open flames, welding or grinding within confined spaces, or within 11 meters or 35 feet of enclosed equipment or piping containing flammable vapors, where the accumulation of vapors could create a hazardous condition. This also applies to areas within 11 meters or 35 feet of sumps or drains where flammable liquids or vapors could collect, or within 11 meters or 35 feet of an electrically classified area. Test the atmosphere in the following order. 1. Check oxygen content first. Ensure it is between 19.5% and 23.5%. 2. Check for flammables, vapor, dust, gas, mist. Verify the concentration is less than 5% of the lower flammable limit, LFL. 3. Check for toxic gases, most commonly carbon monoxide and hydrogen sulfide, or any other hazardous materials as identified in the hazard assessment of the work area. To prevent fires, hot work should be performed in a safe designated area whenever possible to minimize additional hazards. If fire hazards cannot be eliminated, welding curtains or guards must be installed or the hot work must not proceed. A hot work permit is required before starting any hot work tasks to ensure all hazards are controlled and to prevent fire hazards. The area within 11 meters or 35 feet of the work site must be free of flammable and combustible materials. A fire watch or fire watchman must be assigned at the work location from the start of the task until 30 minutes after the work is completed. Special precautions must be taken under the following conditions. When work is performed inside a confined space, atmospheric monitoring shall be provided. Within 11 meters or 35 feet of enclosed equipment or piping containing flammable vapors, within 11 meters or 35 feet of sumps drains where flammable liquids or vapors could collect. Within 11 meters or 35 feet of an electrically classified area. Now, let's discuss when a fire watch or fire watchman should be designated and stationed during hot work activities. A fire watch is required whenever hot work is performed unless the activity takes place in a safe designated area, such as a welding shop. The fire watch duties include observing for fires, spills, and any changes in conditions as outlined on the hot work permit. The fire watch may only attempt to extinguish fires within the capacity of the available fire extinguisher. The fire watch must monitor the hot work area for 30 minutes after hot work operations have ceased to detect and extinguish smoldering fires. An additional 60 minutes of monitoring is required, using methods such as automatic smoke detection systems, security cameras, routine maintenance rounds, or the presence of workers in the area. The fire watch must retrieve the hot work permit, sign it, and return it to the issuer. Expired hot work permits must be kept on file for at least 1 year, plus the current year, in accordance with corporate policy. However, for corporate reviews, it is recommended to retain expired hot work permits for 2 years, plus the current year, to validate that the program was properly implemented. Contractors working at a PSA terminal must either adhere to the requirements outlined in this training or follow their own hot work procedure, provided their procedure is more stringent. The PSA contractor coordinator is responsible for ensuring that the contractor's employees comply with this procedure. Any contractor employee who violates the hot work procedure will be prohibited from continuing work at the PSA terminal. Contractor employees must complete hot work training comparable to this training and provide documentation upon request. Employees involved in hot work activities must receive training and testing relevant to their job duties upon assignment and every 2 years thereafter. Training will cover the following topics: details of the hot work program and when a hot work permit is required, basics of flammables and combustibles, use of atmospheric monitoring equipment, if applicable, site hazard communication program, local emergency response plan and fire extinguisher use. Training documentation must be retained for a minimum of 2 years plus the current year. Let's now review the communication and hot work program review requirements. All affected employees must be notified of each hot work operation prior to commencement. The hot work program must be audited annually. The annual audit will include a review of completed hot work permits, contractor hot work program compliance, employee training and testing records. Finally, all hot work permits must be retained on file for a minimum of 1 year, plus the current year, in accordance with Group HSSS policy. However, for corporate reviews, it is recommended that permits be maintained for 2 years, plus the current year, to ensure the program's compliance. You have now finished the hot work training. To receive credit for this training, you must successfully complete the following quiz.